Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Art 196, Introduction to Computer Graphics. This lesson that we'll be doing today, or lecture, if you want to call it that, will give you a background and overview of HTML. First thing is, what is HTML? It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's the code that's used for browsers to render your page. We will be using a variety of programs this semester, mostly Dreamweaver, that incorporate or use HTML. But to generate a web page, you don't need Dreamweaver or any other programs at all. You can use just TextEdit, simple text, whatever. You'll get a very basic, simple page, and that's what I'm going to do this morning to show you how to do that or how it works. But that's all there is to it. Adobe doesn't own the copyrights to this. No one does. This was developed, I believe, about in 1989 by a scientist at CERN, Tim Berners-Lee. And what he developed this for was to be able to share his scientific pages and documents with his, other scientists around the world, and not have to mail them or email them or anything. Just make them permanently available on the internet, and you need to use a browser in order to render those pages. So that's where it began. That's what it's about. It's again, it's a simply code. It's text. It's used for browsers to be able to render a page. And the code that you use, the HTML, generally are tags that you'll see in a minute that bracket certain parts of text that determine that, is it in an HTML page? Is there a paragraph break? Is there italic? Is it whatever? Okay, so I'm going to start by using a program that's available. I don't know how many of you are using either a PC or a Macintosh, but I'm working on a Mac, and I'm using a program that comes with it called TextEdit. It's a very, very basic text editing program. But that's what I want to use to create a very basic page today in using HTML. For those of you who do choose to use this, what you have to do is you go to Preferences, and by default, if you go back to the original preferences, it will save your page in rich text format, RTF. You don't want to do that. We want just plain text, and that's it. We don't want it to wrap to the page. We don't want it any additional features in here. Nothing at all. I just want plain text. And when it saves the file, I want to be able to add the extension .html myself. So no frills, nothing, because what it does now will automatically add an HTML extension, and you can open that page in a browser. But I don't want to do that. I want you to see what happens behind the scenes here. Something really, really very basic. So we're going to start today with a basic structure of an HTML page. And it starts with an opening tag of HTML. So I'm going to put in here can't spell either, HTML. And tags are bracketed by these left and right carets. So that's the opening tag for an HTML page. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit the return key a couple of times. And now I'm going to put the closing tag, so that anything contained within the opening and closing tag are going to be a part of that page. Anything that lies outside of it will not be read by the browser. So a closing tag looks like this. Again, we put in the left caret, we put in a backslash, and then we also write HTML. So this is pretty much typical of pages in here. What you will see is tags This is your basic HTML tag, the opening and the closing tag. There's two other parts to this as well that you should be aware of. Think of an HTML page like a sandwich. I wish this was my metaphor, but it's not, but it really helps me to understand HTML a lot. Think of the HTML, the opening and the closing bracket, as two slices of bread. Contained within that, you have maybe your condiments. You might have some mustard, you might have some relish, you might have some mayonnaise, you might have a few other things. Well, what the condiments would be the head of the document. So I'm going to put the opening and closing tag of the head. Okay. And I'll put a couple of spaces here, and I'll put the closing tag here for the head of the document. So these are contained within the HTML page. Then in any sandwich, you want, your meats, your sausage, provolone, cheese, whatever. And so that's going to be the body of the tag. So that will be the main core of where your content goes. So I'm going to put the return key a couple of times, and I will put in the body tag. So actually, I can put this up a little bit. I'll put in body. That's my opening tag for the body. And then down here, I'll put in the closing tag. Okay, I hope this is large enough for all of you to see. So this is a fundamental, there's more to it, but that's a fundamental structure of a page. Now, what we want to do is we're going to put in some text. This will be solely a text page, nothing more, nothing else. And then what we'll do is we will render it in a browser, and you can see what happens to all of this. So we just save it with an HTML, because if I were to save this now, it would come up blank. You wouldn't see anything. So for example, if you have the title to a page, that would go in the head of the document. The title of the page appears in a browser in the tab. So let's go ahead and I'll add that. Actually, I'll add it later. But for the body of it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in here. Let's see what the text, what the book uses. I'm going to go ahead and say, welcome. Okay, I'll just say HTML basics. No, I'm trying to use it just as the book does it. For fun and profit. Let me shrink this down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and Shift, Command. Might be a little bit too small. So that will be this will be the title of the page. So I should go ahead and put I put it in the wrong place. Welcome to my first page. That's what I want. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And I want this is the title of it. So I'll put it in here. And so what we want to do here is, I'm going to go ahead and put it in anyway. I said I wasn't going to, but I'm going to put in the opening tag for title. And then right after it, I'll put the closing tag for title. So it indicates what it wants. Later on, when we put in CSS style sheets, if you put in JavaScript, anything like that, it will be in the head of the document. So I'll go ahead and I'll put in the closing tag for that. Okay, so closing tag for title. There we go. And then what we want to do in the body of it is my first web page. So this is going to be welcome to my first web page. Okay. Now, what I should do is I'm going to leave this here. And what else should I put in here? So I'm going to be adding a few things in here. So this is in the body of it. I'll just leave it as is. And I'll add to this period. I'm going to put a couple of spaces, and I'm going to put a return. And I'm going to say web design is fun and ... sometimes easy, period. Okay. So this is fundamental, basic, and I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'll do a save as, just save, make sure that it goes in the right location. Now, I don't want it titled text. I want it titled HTML. So I already have opened and have a folder on my desktop. So this is going to be my first page, or just first page. I'll put my first page. .html. Okay, so I'm going to save it there inside the folder. Now, once this is saved, I can go to my browser. So let's bring up a browser here. And I'm going to create a new page here. I'm going to go to File, Open. Okay, open file. So what the browser is going to do is it's going to save this. This is my first page.html. And you can see I've done this before. Go ahead and open it. And there it is in teeny tiny little type. I can go ahead and zoom in a little bit so you can see this. Welcome to my first page, period. Web design is fun and ... sometimes easy. Well, a couple of things are going on here. Number one, you can see that in my basic text here, I had this on 2 lines. And this chose now to put it all on 1 line. So now I need to add other tags to specify that this is in a paragraph, or if this is a heading, if I want it to be the text to be a particular size or whatever, or if I want it to be italic, then that's what I need to do. Or if I want it to be bold, then I need to add additional tags. And there are a little over 100, maybe 130 tags that you should become familiar with. By using them over time, they will get accustomed to them. So what you need where to look at if you have the textbook is it starts on page 57, where you'll begin to see common tags. And then for HTML5, there's a bunch of new ones. And those will be found on page 60. So if you look from 57 to page 60, you'll see several tags, both that HTML5 inherited and tags that were developed for HTML5. And that's what we're using right now. We will be using HTML5, and for cascading style sheets, it will be CSS3. So now what we want to do is we want to dress this up just a little bit. Not a lot, but just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I decided that maybe I want welcome to my first page. Let's make this an exclamation point. And I want this to be much larger than the rest of anything else. I want this to be the title of my page, not the title in the heading, because if we were to go back to the browser, where you will see that will be, let me go ahead. It will, if I stretch this out a little bit, this is where it is, where it says HTML. And when I hover over it, it's really tiny. I don't know that you can see it that well, but it says HTML basics for fun and profit. That's where the title of the page goes. If you leave your page untitled, it will come up in the browser in the tab untitled, and you don't want to do that. That's important. We'll talk about that more later in the semester, but it's important for search engines to bring your page up to the top. Just the title of a page, because if you just say home page or untitled or whatever, that's not very specific. So that's where that goes. Now we're going to dress up the text just a little bit. So what I want to do is I decided that I want welcome to my first page to be much larger than anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what is called a heading tag. Heading tags are used and are part of the important part of the syntax for an HTML page. Heading tags go from heading 1 through heading 6. And typically heading 1 is the most important, is reserved for the most important text on your page. And if you do happen to use a heading 6 tag, that would be the smallest. So what we're going to do for that, for our heading, is we want this to be the largest. So again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in here an H1, because that's going to be the largest. And I'm going to put in the closing tag here. So we put in, again, bracket it and put H1 again. So we're being very specific now about what we want this text to look like. Now, I want this to be in a separate paragraph. Web design is fun and sometimes easy. So what I'll go ahead here is I want this to be in a paragraph tag. So this is also a very common tag that you'll be seeing, that will have what is called a paragraph tag, which is a P tag. So I'll put the closing tag here. Whoops, I want that to be P and closing tag. Okay. Now let's go ahead and save this and see what we have and see if there's a significant difference. So I'll hit Command S to save, and I'll come back to the browser, which I have down here. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. Big difference. Notice how the heading tag changed the size of the text significantly. And by adding a paragraph tag, it allowed me to put the web design is fun and easy on its own line. So you can have a line break, which is BR, but if you have separate paragraphs or units of text that you want to separate from one to another, then maybe you would want to use a paragraph tag. That would be one thing that we use. So let's add a couple of other things here. Let's go ahead and add, let me see what I want to do here. I'm going to go ahead and add, if we wanted to add a rule, we could do that. I don't want to add that. I want to add, an emphasis. So I'm going to add an M tag. So I'm going to come over here, and I got to come back to my original here. So what if I want this is sometimes easy. So what if I want easy to be italicized? So what I can do is I can, at the front of this, I'm going to put in an M tag, EM for emphasis. And then after this, I will put a closing tag, an EM tag, again, which will italicize this. Let's go ahead here. Whoops, I got to put in the M, make sure that I do that. And let's also, let's say we want fun to be bold. So I'll put in before fun, if I want it to be bold, then that would be a strong tag. How did they come up with the names of these tags? I don't have a clue, but they are standard to web design. And again, you will find them in your textbook, and you could also find them on the W3C as well. So I'm going to put in a strong tag. And after fun, I'll put in the closing tag. Okay. And if I want, I can go ahead and I can hit the return key here. It's not going to show as a return, but it helps me see things a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead, and I wanted fun to be bold. I wanted easy to be italic, so I added an M tag. Another thing too is that I'll do this in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let's go back to my browser. And let's go ahead and refresh. So now you can see fun, the word fun is in bold, and the word easy is in italic. So anything that you want to do to your text, there's typically some sort of tag associated with that that permits you to do that. If you don't do that, it won't work. Let's say, for example, I wanted more space between the ellipsis and sometimes. So if I go back here, and if I were to go ahead and fun and sometimes easy, if I were to add spaces like that and select save, and I come back to my browser and I refresh, there's no difference. So instead, what you need to do is, what we're going to do is we're going to add, what do I want to do here? I want to add non-breaking space is what I want to add. So I'm going to go back here. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this. We can use the old way, or we can do it the new way. So for every hit of every time I touch the space bar, if I want an extra space, I have to put this in here. So there's a couple of them that you can use. You can use the number, or you can use the name. So non-breaking space would be ampersand and N B S P and then semicolon, or yeah, semicolon. Semicolons are like periods in code. They end the statement. So I'm going to copy that, and then after that, I'm going to paste it and paste it and paste it and paste it. And I'm going to hit the return key just so I can see this. So what this is going to do is normally when you're typing using a text editing program like Word or something like that, you don't need to pay attention to these sorts of tags, codes, but it is going on behind the scenes. So this is going to add, every time you hit the space bar, this is going to add 5 of those. Okay, so I saved it, bring up my my final page. I'm going to go ahead and in the browser, and I'm using Firefox. I'm going to refresh it. And you can see that it moved it over 5 spaces. So when you're using programs like Dreamweaver, or if you're using online web editors like Wix, or if you're using this other software that we'll be using like MobiRise, you don't need to worry about this. In Dreamweaver, you don't have to know it forwards and backwards, but you should become familiar with all of it. So in the event that there is a mistake, you will be able to go back in and troubleshoot and correct it. So these are the fundamentals. If you take a look at page 60, as I said, there's some new tags here for HTML5. Some other things that they've added are articles, asides, tags for audio, tags for figures, tags for captions, footers, headers, all sorts of things. So the next thing that I want to do now, and we'll probably call it quits today after this, is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to open up. Yeah, I can go from here to here. And you should still see what I have going on here. Is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up Dreamweaver. And we're going to look behind it and see what's going on underneath the hood, so to speak. So you can see just what we did here, something very basic. Now you're going to see pages that I have already built because I kept them saved. But I'm going to go ahead under File, New. Come on. Don't get sluggish on me. I'm going to go ahead and close these pages just so it doesn't bog me down. This is a page, one of the pages that you will be using, building slow but sure. I'm going to go ahead and hit File for New. And what I want here is under New Document, I just want a simple HTML page, and we're using HTML5. So I'll go ahead and I'll create it. And you see we just have a blank page. But if we view this under Split View, now we can view this in Code View. So this looks very similar to what I was doing in TextEdit. We can look at it in Live View. We can see there's nothing there yet. But if we look at it in Split View, and I go ahead from the bottom and I pull this up a little bit, now as I'm adding text, you can see that I can add my features here. Now there's a little bit more, add my content. We can see that we have here in HTML5, this indicates this doc type HTML that we are using HTML5. But then beneath it, you can see again, here's that sandwich metaphor I was using. We have our opening tag for HTML. We have our closing tag for HTML. We have the head. We have the closing tag for head. Notice it already specifies, do I want a title for this? And then we have the body tag. So anything, any text or content that we add to our page is going to be inside the body tag. So let's go ahead and start. And also there's the meta characters that this indicates that this is being done, written in English, the UTF-8. So all of this is done in Dreamweaver behind the scenes. You don't need to worry about it. But what I can do, instead of untitled, I'll go ahead and I'll name it our first page. Page in Dreamweaver. Okay. And now let's go ahead and inside the body tag. So I can put that there. I can also, if I start typing here, if I just click up here, notice that the body tag is automatically selected. It knows that I want to put something in there. And as soon as I do that, this little block appears, and then the orange indicates that it's going to be placed on the page here. So again, welcome to my first page in Dreamweaver, period. And as I'm writing that, notice in Code View down at the bottom in our Split View, it's automatically added that. So you can work both ways. I can work in the preview screen, and I can also work in the Code View as well. So if I want to, if I go ahead at the end of this sentence here, and I hit the return key, watch what happens in the Code View. Notice that already it put a P tag in front of welcome and a closing tag after Dreamweaver. Okay, and now it knows to put in a brand new paragraph. So, web design is fun and ... or ... And then I can add some spaces. And every time I do that, notice it already added the non-breaking space, the ones that I put in by hand. Is fun and easy in Dreamweaver. Now, if I want this to be italic, or if I want this to be bold, I can do that here. or I need to add CSS to do that. Now, it might be easier here if I go ahead and if I just highlight easy, and let me see if I have something. Now, see, they have deprecated it from our properties panel down here. So in the past, I used to be able to add, do that here, but I would have to go up here instead. So this will be for another day. We would go to CSS Designer and we would have to create our style sheet in order to put it in here. So that's what the lessons are going to be about. Now, some other things that we'll be doing too, if I hit this again, let's say I want to make a list. Oftentimes we have what are called ordered lists and unordered lists. So if I put in, let's see, my grocery list. So I'm going to name this my grocery list. So I'll name, let's say I want milk. And I want, I'll hit the return key and I want, I don't know, juice. And I hit the return key and I want, what else? I don't know, chocolate. And maybe one more thing, granola. I haven't had my breakfast yet. So this is kind of awkward, but if what we're going to use oftentimes, if I select all of this here, okay, I can hit down at the bottom here and I can select this and make it an unordered list. So this is used very frequently, unordered lists or ordered lists in web design that make it much easier to read lists of items that normally would be difficult on a computer screen to read. So instead of that ordered list, unordered list, if we wanted to, I can change it in the code view, for example. Notice here, it has UL, that's the opening tag for unordered list. There's the closing tag for unordered list. And then each of the items contained within the list are list items. If I change this from unordered list to ordered list, so OL, and change this to, and notice also that as I just changed that first one, it says that there's a mistake. The line 16 is in red now. So there's something wrong with it. So it doesn't tell you what's wrong, but now it's fixed it. And now when I go back and I look up here, you'll see that items 1 through 4 are no longer listed as bullet points, as unordered lists, but they're listed in numeric order. So if I want to take it back to an ordered list, I can just go ahead and highlight it again, and I come back down here and use it as unordered. And let's go ahead. That's ordered. Oops, wrong. There we go. Unordered list. So there you have it. That's working in Dreamweaver. As I said, later on this semester, this is basically the kind of page that we're going to design. Okay, it will be a 3-column format. And you can see that when I switch over here, and if we look at CSS Designer, let's look here. Let me pull this over a little bit so we can see all the parts. We will be using the DOM. We will be using CSS Designer to format all of that and dress it up a bit. Because when Tim Berners-Lee developed HTML, he was not thinking in terms of what we're doing with websites today. It was meant just like publishing a term paper. That's all this was meant to do. And over the years, from 1989 until the present, a lot has changed. Tim Berners-Lee did not, as I said, did not copyright any of this, so it's all open source. The W3C is the World Wide Web consortium, or the people who determine what is accessible for people with disabilities and they determine the common standards. And I have a link to that on my website that you can go to. And if you have extra time that you want to kill, you can spend days and days and days and days reading about all the rules and regulations. But as you can see, what I've done here is typically the way pages are broken down for you, just to get an idea, especially in HTML5, is that along the top, we have our nav bar. And that's a common location for it. It could be underneath the header. The header is not to be confused with the head of the document. So this is, basic structure of most web pages these days. You'll either have your head, your navigation bar here, or it will be underneath the header. And then the header is where you have your logo, the title of your website, any main graphics that kind of define your website and separate it from anything else. And it will be consistent from page to page to page. After that, you have your main content. Now you have a choice of a 1, 2, or typically a 1, 2, or 3 column format. The columns to the left and to the right are called asides. Remember I said that there are new tags that are used for HTML5. So nav is the one for nav bar. Header is used for just that, header, that's a new tag. Asides are used for that. And then we have our main content here. Okay. Then at the very bottom, what we always have is at the bottom here, we're going to have another element to our page that's called a footer. And footers are typically where you put copyright information. If the content, the date it was last edited is important, then you would have a date there for that. If you have an email for the webmaster who's dealing with this and in charge of it, they will be that's where you would put that. But this is a fundamental structure that you'll have for the page. And that's what we'll be designing using the lessons in this course. Okay. We'll start with a very fundamental or rudimentary structure. And then we will be adding content to it. And as we're adding content, actually before we add content, we'll be adding CSS styles and a style sheet to it so that we have here. So for example, if I wanted to see how did I get this image in here with the background and the text and what's the, controlling all of that. If I come over here and I click on any of it, we can see that this right now, I can't work on this because what I had done is this page was developed from something that we call, and I'm drawing a blank at the moment, it's a template. So you can create your own templates in here. What I would have to do is I would have to open it. So I could go ahead and I could go to File. Let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and Site. I'm going to manage sites, and I'm going to go back to the spring 2021 and make sure that that is done here. Okay, and let's go back to our CSS Designer. And actually, I'm going to open up the original page or the that we have here. I need to look at, I don't want that. Let's go back here. I want, files should not be here. Let's see. I don't want any of those in there. Why are those there? Those should be my lesson files. So I may have modified them, and I hope I didn't. I want to find my template. Here are the templates. So let's go ahead and open up our template, my green template. So I'll go ahead and I'll open that. And now what I can do is I can look under my CSS Designer. So this is the basic template that we will be creating first before you add any content at all. So if I click inside any of this, we can go up here and combine both. We can see both the live view and the split view. And if I scroll to the top here, you can see within the head that we've added a few things. This is number one, this is a template from which we can base a number of other pages. We could also see that in order to make our website style it so that it can change to the kind of screen that we're viewing it on. So it will look one way when it is on a large screen, one way that when it's on a tablet, and one way when it's on a smartphone. So notice that when I have it for a large, it's a 3-column. When it's on a tablet, it's a 2-column. And when it's a smartphone, then it's a 1-column. And I have the little hamburger symbol here for that. So we're going to be using Bootstrap for that. And again, in order to see that, let me go back to split view. You can see that this is where Bootstrap has been added, linked to that, the CSS style sheet for Bootstrap. And we also have a link to our finished green styles CSS in here. So all of these that you see here are located in the head of our document. And then we can see how the page is broken down into an overall container. It's broken down into the various columns. And you can see that it's broken down. It's quite complicated, but you start with something very basic and add to it. And over time, you'll understand the fundamental structure of it all. But I can come back in here and I can look at any of this. And if I select, let's look at the head of the document. So I'm going to look at the CSS. Let's look at all of them. If I click in here, I should be able to select. I want the, let's look at current and see what pops up here. Nothing at the moment. So it's not working the way I hoped. So let's click down here. None of these are selecting. So I'm going to go back instead of overall. Let's look at green styles. I don't want Bootstrap. I want all. And let's select in the background here. And if I scroll down, maybe I can find some of these. Make sure that I have green styles selected. And if I select any one of these, let's say, for example, I have, there's the head bar. Let's look at header row H2. So you can see inside the header, when I select that, it highlights in blue. And this is the H2 tag, the heading 2 tag that defines our logo here for Green Start. Likewise, if I just put in here header, we can see all the tags or the styles that have been added for header. There's header row, header P for a P tag inside there. We can have header H2 link. We have header row and header row for P. So we have all of these, not only for one size, but you'll have multiples depending on the Bootstrap that we're using here. Make sure that it is a responsive website. And that is why I've chosen to use this old 2017 version of Dreamweaver Classroom in a Book as opposed to one of the more current ones. So anyway, unless there are any questions, that's an introduction to HTML and kind of an overview of what it looks like, HTML looks like in Dreamweaver today. So I'm going to wrap it up. And if there aren't any questions, this will be posted online within an hour or so. Okay. No questions? No? Let me go ahead and Post it on Canvas. I'm going to post this video on my YouTube channel. So it will not be on Canvas. And again, if you've forgotten where my YouTube channel is, if I pull this down here, what I can do is, let me go to my homepage here. So I'll click here and I'm just going to put in kmart66.com. Okay, go under Kirk's classes, go to video tutorials, and it will take you to all of my playlists. And you can see here's a playlist here, Art 196, Introduction to Web Design, Fall 2021. This is where it will be posted. Okay. I may have some posted that I've done I can't remember, on Canvas that I've done in the past. Those will work too. I basically repeat what I'm doing here. Q&A. Okay. It wasn't on Word or a notes page. Again, I'm using a Mac, and on a PC, to be perfectly honest, I think it's on a Mac. This is TextEdit, which is in your utilities folder. On a PC, are you using a PC, Devin? So it will be it's a basic Word. It's not Word itself, but if you do use something like Word, you need to turn off all of the additional functions that it has in order to get just basic text. But give it a try, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Again, this is just background information for you today. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing. And okie doke. So that's it. I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll go ahead and I'll pause the recording of this.